What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Couple on Fire podcast. Man, we have a good one for you today. Today, we're talking all about affair prevention, and that starts when?
Right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Couple on Fire podcast. This podcast is for couples, for marriages, and for families within the Christian community. We exist to help break the stigma that happens within the Christian community. We're talking about divorce, we're talking about addiction, and we're talking about so much more. We believe that all this is possible in this life strictly based on the power of Jesus Christ and his ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in. What is up? What is up? What is up? Hey, welcome to the Couple on Fire, guys. We have an exciting show for you today. If you've never joined us before, we are a couple. Yes, we're married.
Yeah.
You can't guess it. Couple on Fire. Our podcast is all about how to take your faith, family, and future to the next level. We are Christians. We're strong in our faith, but we are not Bible scholars, which means that we're not going to be perfect in everything that we talk about biblically, okay? So don't hold us to the fire.
We try real hard
on that, but we do try really, really hard. We do love the Lord. We try to keep the Lord at the center of everything that we do. So if you're brand new and that's something that interests you, please hit the subscribe button, depending on what platform you're on, and listen to us. Maybe there's something that's good that you will like. All right, hit the share and subscribe button if you would, please. Okay, so today we're actually going to talk about something that we were able to be part of over this last weekend. So this last weekend for us, depending on when you're listening or watching this, is May of 2024. We just were at Jay and Laura LaFoon's Celebrate Your Marriage, which they do every May and every October in Michigan, northern Michigan, on Mackinac Island at the Grand Hotel. So they had a guest named Gary Thomas. If you don't know who he is, he wrote a lot of really awesome books on marriage. Sacred Marriage is one of his most popular ones. And he was a guest there, but he did something during the weekend. He did one of his talks and stuff.
yesterday.
It was the one that was yesterday, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was really powerful and really stuck with Christy and I. So we really want to talk about it today. It's about affair prevention.
But I am super excited to talk about it because we were there we got there Saturday, and the conference is Sunday and Monday. Yesterday was Monday. And this was such a good topic, and you don't hear people talk about it a lot in marriage things because it's an uncomfortable topic to talk about, right? You don't want a woman or a man in their relationship being like, what, like start asking questions and people start fighting. But what is in marriage you have to do? You have to be on fire for God, on the same page, setting boundaries, and you have to be aware of potential things that could be harmful to the marriage and start to become worse and worse and worse. Josh and I have done other podcasts on, the small compromises that will affect your marriage or your life, right? Just making one small compromise just gives Satan a foothold, in. So I'm really, really excited to talk about this. I really don't have anything else to talk about. I know Josh usually asks me, but we were on Mackinac Island all weekend. And
the weather was great too.
The weather was great, and Jay and Laura were great. And Gary Thomas is who they had for their special speaker. And we got to meet this other amazing couple, Chris and Kendra, who worked with us as the volunteers of this. So it was us two couples that were doing a lot of things for Jay and Laura. Jay and Laura, they really hump it out too, man.
They do.
They break their backs.
There's some hard workers.
Yeah, they are. Of their own stuff.
Yeah, we had to keep up with them.
Yeah, but it was a really good weekend. I'm excited to talk about this topic, though.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of wrap up at the end. So if you stay tuned, you're going to hear us talk a little bit more about Celebrate Your Marriage. It's kind of part of our last thing that we really want to talk about. And there's something special about it that we really would like to talk about in regards to that. So affair prevention, right? And we're titling this one Affair Prevention, which is inspired by Gary Thomas. So now all these points came directly from Gary, but a lot of this content did come directly from him. And so
the topic was inspired.
The topic was definitely inspired.
We're not saying this was Gary's talk.
No.
Because we don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, we don't want to get it wrong. But number two, our goal is, and we talked to Gary and we let him know that, we're interested in having him as a guest. And to be honest with you guys, we're really interested in having Gary come on and kind of share his insights on this exact same topic, only because we found it so powerful. It's something that we've never heard talked about before.
Correct.
It's something that the way that he talked about it was so powerful and so moving.
Yeah.
So much that it inspired us to do it today.
It was so beautifully placed.
Yeah. We're setting it up to now what we're going to do today is going to stink. So apparently, but I don't think so. Okay. So I do that. I'll move it back for you. Affair prevention. Okay, so we have 4 points on that. So the first point we're going to kick off with today is all about infatuation, right? We have to learn how to recognize and address infatuation. And why don't you tell everybody what that means?
So it's funny because it means like someone that's intriguing to you, that's outside of your marriage, someone that you're just like, oh, wow. Like
this is water.
You just, you find like a person of the opposite sex, like you're drawn towards them a little bit, and you shouldn't be like that. And what he's talking about is kind of emotional affairs. People don't end up just like, oh, naked in a hotel room together, like doing it without these steps coming into place.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes an emotional affair. But before it even comes it starts with like an infatuation. And we need to start recognizing those things. And what I loved about Gary is that he talked about studies and statistics that they had done. And the average person has an infatuation generally once every 10 years. So if you get married young, about every 10 years, there's a person in there somewhere else besides your spouse that you could tend to become infatuated with. And you want to be able to have the type of a relationship with your spouse or accountability partners to where you're like, hey, I really shouldn't be around this person. You know, they're a temptation for me. I don't know if I'd use that word, but you guys could be able to have your own talks this pot. You know, use words that you would find possible. But Josh and I have developed a very strong foundation marriage. I don't know if we'd use the word infatuation, but we have an open dialogue about like if we shouldn't be around somebody or even somebody else that's pushing the boundaries. Like what if someone else is infatuated with us and we recognize that infatuation? We shouldn't be around that person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is important, right? So a lot of this is having a lot of self-discovery, right? Understanding yourself, like, okay, am I willing to be honest with myself?
Yeah.
Because the one thing that Gary talked a lot about is that affairs with men after a certain age don't come down to how the other person looks, the opposite sex looks, right? It comes down to how much attention that woman is giving that man, right? That kind of attention that we soak in, that we need, that we want. Because when our wives are, you know, helping raise kids and they maybe even have a career that they're working on and they're soaking all of themselves and pouring themselves all into this area, we're not getting fed the way that we need. And so instead, maybe we have another woman in our lives, maybe at work or at church, that is willing to do this for us. You know, it's easy to become infatuated with that. And so, you know, if we don't have enough personal work, if we don't have enough wherewithal within ourselves to say, hey, you know what, myself, I'm willing to admit right now something's going on, you know, and I don't have any problem coming home and telling Christy like, hey man, I, you know, think this woman is like looking at me like a certain way. And I think she may have something, I don't know. It makes me really uncomfortable because I get a feeling like somebody is that way, you know? And so I don't have a problem telling her that. And I want her to know that, you know, I want Christy to know like, hey, I recognize that there's something that I feel that might be coming up that's approaching me. And I don't want any part of that.
Well, because this is actually where the seed gets planted in the soil, right? And it's true. Like if the only way that would sink in is if I wasn't like saying, complimenting and being his biggest fan and like pouring into him. And that stuff happens in marriage. There's ebbs and flows where those things aren't being done. So we have to recognize if another person's coming up, and women too, like if a guy's coming up like, oh man, does your husband know how lucky they are to be married to you? Or
red flag.
Like those types of things. Those are calculated comments to see how fulfilled that person is emotionally in their marriage. And if you're not, like, let's say you guys are in strife right now and you're in a season of hardship, you have to be very cautious of that, because at first you may not think anything of it, but over time, if you allow it and allow it and allow it, you could start to get an emotional attachment to that person. And that is what Gary was talking about, because if you recognize it at the get, it's not a big deal to come and say, hey, I think this person is, you know, trying to, I don't know.
Yeah. Impress themselves.
Yes. And so it's like, it's important to talk about that. So that's like, okay, let's put safeguards around it. Josh had a person that was doing that 7-8 years ago when we very first started up Celebrate Recovery. She was following him around like a little puppy dog, like just wanting to tell him how amazing he was and how awesome and all these things. She started sending him messages on Facebook, and he recognized it, brought it to me, and that's when we combined our Facebook pages. I mean, surprisingly, he's never gotten messages from any woman since, but that's the boundaries that we have to start putting around. But our spouse, if we're not comfortable bringing that up and talking to the spouse and discussing it with each other, if I was like, why do you care? Are you attracted to her? Like if he started talking to me about it, that would make him, it's actually worse.
Now it's not a safe zone for me.
It's not a safe zone. And again, it's not filling his cup. And then someone else could start filling his cup.
And I'm the enemy now, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's just things like that you have to be conscientious of. Don't be talking negatively about your spouse with other people, unless it's a therapist, pastor, things like that, where you're getting counseling. You shouldn't be talking negatively about your spouse to anyone, because that also seeps into your heart as well.
Yeah. What I like though is that Gary was really transparent about the infatuation thing. He said over the tenure of the relationship with him and his wife, and I think they've been together for over 30 years, he said it's happened to him twice and it's happened to his wife once. And
I didn't want to tell so much of their story. We have to give him something to tell.
Okay, well, I'm already down this. Let me just share this little bit.
That's why I've been avoiding that.
Oh, man. Okay, nobody's going to remember. That's fine. Okay, so forget what I'm about to say, but remember it right now. So what he did say is he said that there was 2 infatuations that he's had in his relationship, and his first one was bad. And so bad that he didn't even realize it was really going on. And when his wife approached him and said, hey, I think something's going on here, like she was brave enough to approach him and say that to him. And he got super defensive about it. I'm like, no, that's not happening. But once they started having more discussions about it, he came clean and said, okay, yeah, I think there is something going on here. Nothing physically happened, but they were already, he said it was getting close, right? It was getting really close. And having that ability to walk through that, he said when the second time it started to happen, he was able to nip it in the bud.
With a different person.
With a different person, right? Years later, he was able to nip it in the bud. And that's being able to recognize and address that infatuation before it gets to be too much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll forget I said all that.
Yeah. I'm like, you have to avoid that topic. We have to be able to have him talk about something when he's on. Don't talk about him. Talk about something else.
Number two, let's talk about intimacy, right? So nurture emotional and physical intimacy.
So this is really important. So this is all to recognize what's going on. So the first one was to be self-aware, right? And are you not having something fulfilled in your marriage? It starts with emotion. So is it emotionally something with your heart, something like that? You have to be able to recognize that so you can talk to your spouse and be able to set boundaries so that doesn't start to creep in. The next one that you have to be able to recognize is, when's the last time you and your spouse have made eye contact with each other, smiled at each other, or just simply touched? Like, that's when you can start recognizing, are we going down the wrong path? When's the last time we just simply touched each other, being around each other, having that connection? That's really important. If you and your spouse can sit back and be like, I don't remember the last time it was that we held hands or actually looked at each other or even smiled at one another, unless we're talking about the kids' schedules and it's just like we're business partners.
Yeah.
That's something that you guys need to sit down and say, hey, look at me. Like, let's talk about maybe a couple weeks from now getting a babysitter and being able to go out and just be together, do life together. And it's not just hard things in life that you have to do together. It needs to be some fun things, because if these things go away, eventually sexual intimacy goes away. And that's when the relationship really starts to die and other people could weasel their way in between you guys.
Well, yeah, you're very susceptible to that. But I really want to talk about the eye contact thing real quick, because I think this is super important. If you feel like you are being connected to somebody outside of your marriage and on a specific level, you're going to have a really hard time making real eye contact with your spouse. You're not going to want to do that. You know that you feel uncomfortable. It makes us feel uncomfortable looking someone in the eye, especially someone that we care about, if we feel like we're being deceiving to a certain degree, even if we can sit and justify all the reasons why, or that I'm not doing anything wrong. Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you shouldn't have any problem being comfortable looking your spouse in the eye. And I think there's a lot of these signs when they work them together. It really shows like, okay, there's a problem here or a potential problem on the horizon. And so that is, that's part of our physical intimacy. Eye contact is a very intimate thing. It's when we're really looking at, like, before I had to go run and do something earlier today. And before I left, I stopped. Christy was sitting on the couch and I stopped and I looked at her right in the face and I gave her a big, fat, wet, juicy kiss. And I kind of looked at her for a second while I was doing it, And so, that's important that we do those things. It's just really important. But if we're not, we have to ask ourselves, what's happening right now?
I have a hard time looking him in the eyes only because he still gives me butterflies in my stomach. My stomach gets all queasy and I'm like, and I just, it's hard for me to look at you.
But maybe at times, but most of the time it's like you don't have a problem making eye contact with me during conversation.
No, but I'm just like, you make me all giddy.
And how long has it been? And what kind of excuses are we making to not have physical intimacy?
Right.
Maybe I've gained weight and now I'm blaming that. You got to do it anyway. Like, you got to push beyond these things. It is important.
Turn off all the lights.
Right. You do what you have to do to make it work. Like, no matter what, it's so vitally important that we stay physically intimate with our partners. It's a necessity within our relationship.
And it's hilarious because Gary did say that if it had one couple, if it had been longer than 6, you were telling too much about his story, babe.
Oh.
About 6 months. And he's like, I wish they would have came to me at 6 months for counseling, not like 2 years. And that's the thing, is that we'll get complacent in our marriages. We'll go, we won't, but other people will go
a month,
2 months. And then the next thing you know, it's 3 months, 4 months. And then neither one of them are bringing it up, figuring the other person doesn't want to do it. Both of you are feeling, unwanted, and you start getting the attention of someone else. Like, I loved how Josh remembered that Gary had said it doesn't even become visual, because guys are very visual creatures, but it doesn't even become that so much anymore. It's about, like, someone is seeing me, like, for the guy, someone is seeing me. Someone is telling me, like, I'm an awesome man and, all of these things. And guys really, they have huge egos. They like their egos.
Need that.
Yeah. And that's why the book Love and Respect is so powerful. Because if women start to feel loved, emotionally loved by someone else, or the guys start to feel really respected by someone else, like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, I can't believe it. Seriously. And so you have to recognize those things and kibosh them immediately. And we should be able to, and we've talked about this previously on our podcast, we should be able to say, hey, I'm uncomfortable with that interaction with you and that person. It's like, I need you to not be around that person anymore, or I might kill them. And then I'm going to be in prison.
Right. I have a prison shank. No, Christy sometimes will say those things to me, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I know she's lying right now, but man, I like it. Like, she's got to be telling me something that isn't true about me, but I'm okay with that. Like, it's A-okay with me.
I do not lie.
No, she doesn't, right? But I feel like, like we do.
Imposter
syndrome. We have a hard time taking compliments on things. And so, but it's so important that we still do that. You're very good at that. Like, you're very good at, but like, oh no, my man's going to feel like a king. Like, he deserves to be that way. And so, like, I feel the same way about you. Like, I want you to know that you're better than every other human on this planet. And so with that though,
I actually think that in my head though, like, if any other guy, like, even tried to come up and like say anything to me, I'm like, like, he treats me so good. Like, he treats me so good. Like, they're like, sorry, like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Like, I like high end steaks, and you're trying to come at me with some like Big Mac or something. Like,
Right.
I'm good.
That's funny. So physical intimacy, make sure that it is a part of your regimen. Okay, let's see what Rob.
I really like this. So Rob said, study your spouse, which you've talked about before, that you've done with me.
Yeah.
Study what a healthy relationship looks like. I do like that.
Yeah.
Study the 5 love languages. Study red flags in relationships, and especially yours. Like, study the red flags in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot easier to see things creeping up when you have a passion for your marriage, and that is so true. It's every relationship is going to have a little bit of a different red flag than others when it comes to starting to put cracks in the boundaries. When we first entered into our relationship, I had a lot of trust issues, and it didn't help that I knew Josh earlier in life. I already had trust issues, and then I was getting with Josh, and I already was like, oh my gosh, it's like the worst person I could get when it comes to trust. But we had to go through a lot. He had to go through a lot of hard interrogation sometimes, me going through his things, phones, computers, all of those things, even without him knowing, because I needed to feel safe and secure and solid in our relationship. And every once in a while, it still like creeps up where I'm like, but we have to make sure that we recognize even those thoughts. If maybe we're creating something out of nothing too.
Yeah, but it's still important even after this many years. I'm like, okay, here's my phone. If you're feeling uncomfortable, here's my phone. Like, here it is. Like, if you feel a certain feeling about something, like, I want you to dive into it. Get rid of it. Like, and it should never be like, well, no, after this long, like, you should know me better than that. I have that feeling sometimes, but I know that feeling is a feeling of pride and not a feeling of connection with my spouse. And so I have to burst that by saying, no, if you're feeling this way, I don't want you to feel this way, and you don't need to feel this way. So what can I do to help prevent that from happening?
Yes.
So it's important. All right. So moving on. Number three. How are you guarding your heart and setting boundaries? How are you guarding your heart?
Yeah, you need to guard your heart because you have to start recognizing, like, are you thinking about this person before you're leaving for the day? Like, are you thinking about someone other than your spouse when you're getting ready? You and your spouse have to sit down and say, okay, if you start feeling a certain way, or if someone starts coming this way at you and you start feeling uncomfortable, we're going to sit down. It's going to be an immediate thing for us that we have to talk about. And then we can discuss together boundaries maybe around that person. And it's, how can we not be around that person, or how can we be around that person as little as possible? Things to put in your own safeguards, to put into your own marriage, to make both people feel comfortable
and safe.
Yes. Emotional boundaries is where it starts. Like we were talking about earlier. It's like I said earlier, talking negatively about your spouse to other people, that's setting a bad root in your heart against your spouse. But it's also maybe talking about intimate things about your life, how everything is going. You start to develop a personal connection with the person. And then the other person is like, oh man, me and my spouse, we're fighting right now. And she doesn't understand me like you understand
wish my
me.
wife did this like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had people say that to me.
Things like that. Yeah.
It's been years, but you know who the people are.
Yeah.
But we talk about those types of things because I'm like, that just makes me uncomfortable. And first off, I laugh. Like, some people are like, oh my gosh, I wish my wife was more like you. Like, I've had a guy say that to me and I started cracking up laughing. I'm like, no, you don't. You want your wife barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You do not want a mouthy, sassy thing like me.
You don't want, he doesn't want a queen.
No.
But he wouldn't know how to treat a queen.
No.
And that's the problem with people, is they don't understand, like, there is a way to guard our heart. There are things that Christy and I do in our relationship, highly intentional. Years and years and years ago, we've talked about this lots of time on our podcast about we don't watch movies with nudity. Listen, the majority of movies that have nudity are not going to bug my wife, right? There's usually boobs in it, right?
Yeah.
My wife sees them every day. She has her own, right? She doesn't matter. She doesn't need to not watch those movies, but we choose not to safeguard our marriage as a total, right? Which is really to help prevent me from seeing things that are not, that I shouldn't be seeing other than my wife. And so, we safeguard those things. If there's women in church or in people that we used to know or whatever want to come up and hug me, I've learned to kind of turn my hip to the side and kind of do the step back handshake. And I've had women call me out on it before, oh, that's how it is. That's how it is, and yeah. And so,
usually the women that are calling him out are the ones that really want to hug.
Right. I'm sure, they want to press their chest into you when they do, it's all this stuff that's inappropriate. And it's, no, I need to guard my heart. These are things that are intentional. If I'm getting a weird feeling that wherever I was and Christy wasn't there, and I feel like there was somebody that was, last year we were at Celebrate Your Marriage and Christy went into the room and slept for a while and I got locked out. She had the key on her and I didn't want to knock on the door to wake her up. So I sat out on the bench outside the room. And then next thing you know, some ladies came up and they sat down on the bench and started talking to me. And I felt very uncomfortable, And so I started saying, oh, my wife's in this room. I started talking about this, but I instantly, when I'd seen my wife, I told her about it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a way of guarding my heart. You know, I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. I just want to let you know. Nothing.
Well, especially if we were out and about later and the women were like, oh, hi. I'd be
Right.
like,
yeah. And it's just all of it together. You know, it's like, these are
Yeah.
ways that we guard our heart. We have to be willing to do that. How are we being accountable? Number one, we should be accountable first and foremost to our spouse. Right? I should be 100% open with my wife and spouse. How do I be accountable? She has passwords to everything. She has access to everything. We have shared social media intentionally for all of these. These are ways that we do that. But then also we can find accountability with other men or other women, friends and spouses. Not friends and spouses, but friends that have strong spouses.
Rob said,
Yeah.
speaking truth into those moments of she should know me better than that is so important. You kill those lies with truth. Past traumas will lie to us in the present. Agreed. Boundaries, another very important thing. Great points tonight. Yes.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah,
Thanks,
these
Rob.
are
So true. What another thing about it is having, you know, it's for encouragement and support, biblical knowledge. Like if you feel like you're struggling with something too, obviously you need to be talking to your spouse about it. But sometimes, depending on if you something that you guys are going to start right now, depending on the strength of relationship, you might need to go to a pastoral staff or a biblical mentor first to get it out to them, the accountability, and say, hey, I really feel like I'm starting to have this emotional attachment to this person. I really want to talk to my spouse about it. You know, things like that. So you can get maybe the hiccups or the like wading through mud out of the way, be more comfortable talking about it before you go to the spouse, and get some wisdom and support in that, because God can save marriages. Josh and I have seen it. We have seen God save marriages that have been the most broken, where trust has been broken on every level, with intimacy, emotional ties, all of these things.
Yeah.
And God can still heal it. So we're not saying that, but what we do want to say is your marriage should be protected from that from the beginning. And nobody falls into an affair without going through these steps first, like getting like, oh, they're starting to fulfill something that obviously I have a need for that. I need to get that fulfilled from my spouse. So I need to go to my spouse and talk to them about like, hey, I really don't feel like we're making eye contact a lot, or praying together, or things like that.
Yeah, the last point of this one, though, you know, I really want to talk about this real quick, is about avoiding triggers, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, you know, are we putting ourselves in a position to win, to avoid these triggers, or just be, you know, tested, like, oh, I can handle this, you know? We should not be putting ourselves in situations to be tempted. So we had the pleasure of meeting a couple during this conference over the weekend, and they share a cell phone. And they share a cell phone. They're adult.
They have for 8 years.
They have for 8 years. Adult people that share a cell phone. Okay, I don't know anybody
and
like
they both
that.
have full-time jobs.
They both have full-time jobs and children, and they share a cell phone. And they just come out of nowhere and said, oh, we'll tell you why. You know, we've had some trust issues in the past. We've had some things happen in the past where we have some trust issues. And instead of saying, no, we'll just work on being better, they said, no, we're getting rid of all our social media. I'm getting goosebumps right now even saying this.
Yeah, because they had all of the trust broken. All of it.
Yeah, full on.
In their marriage.
Yeah, full on. And so instead of saying, you know what, we're going to work real hard on avoiding these triggers and try harder, there's like, nope, we're going to make it to where we don't even go buy these triggers anymore. No more social media at all.
They got rid of it all.
And they share a flipping cell phone.
They share a phone. No, it's a smartphone. It's not a flip phone.
No, it's an iPhone. It's a nice phone. It's a brand new iPhone.
But they share it.
But they share it. I mean, how committed are you?
And they both have full-time jobs, not together.
Right. It blows your mind, doesn't it?
Yes, because I don't know how. I was thinking to myself, like,
how would we do that?
How would we do that? They do it, and they make it work.
They make it work because their marriage matters so much that they don't want to have an affair be a problem in their relationship, that they're like, well, we want to prevent it so much that we're willing to share a flipping cell phone.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. I love that. That's
they
like
got rid
the
of
greatest
all social
testimony.
Media. Yeah.
Yes.
They got rid of all social media.
Yeah.
They share a cell phone. I'm like, that is awesome.
That is committed.
Yes.
That is my marriage matters so much that I'm willing to do this. So avoid triggers. What are you willing to do to avoid the triggers? You know, and we're talking about quit your job. Maybe you have to. Maybe you guys have to. Maybe you're making $200,000 a year. You have to go down to making 30 grand a year. Maybe that's what you have to do. You know, what is your marriage worth? And I just think that's so powerful. So I wanted to bring that up.
Yes.
All right. For our very last point, invest. How are you actually investing in your marriage?
I know it's so funny to me because, as many of you know, Josh and I do an event every year called Perfectly Blended. This is going to be our 4th year doing it. It's amazing. It's our 4th.
I know.
Already.
We're old.
But it's so funny because when you talk to people about it, going to a marriage event, a lot of times people are like, no, we're good. Like, our marriage is good. We don't need to go to one of those. And it's like, you don't want to wait until your marriage is bad to go to one of them.
Be too late. You're going to be going with your next spouse.
Right. You want to be going to those things right now so that you can have hard conversations, but do fun things together, learn together, connect with other couples, get powerful testimonies like Josh and I just got this last weekend. That's powerful to us. It encourages us, and really like challenges us. Like, would we do that? Like, are we like that? And stuff like that. So you have to be able to continuously pour into your marriage. And going to a marriage conference, what's the price that you can put on your marriage, right? Spending $1,000 to go away for the weekend twice a year, $2,000 a year. You're saying your marriage isn't worth that. That's not true. And that's something that Satan wants you to believe. Like, you should be sitting down weekly and having intentional conversations together about your schedules and the plans that you have. You should be going out on date nights and talking about, like, where do you see us in 10 years? What do you see us in 5 years? You guys should be talking about going through ebbs and flows. Like, one of you in your relationship right now, like, if you guys really sat down and got down and dirty, one of you may be like struggling and you're just trying to keep your head above water because you don't want to let your spouse down.
You don't even know it.
Right. And you get it out. You get it out. And it's like, no, we're in this together. Like, we're doing this thing called life together. And let's talk about how that we can get through it together. What if you're both like that? What if you both feel like you're barely keeping your head above water and you are not getting your emotional cup filled, but neither one of you are? And how can you do it together? Don't expect one to swim across the ocean for you when they're out there drowning too. It just things like that is the communication. It comes down to communication, but doing these healthy things to pour into your marriage continuously.
Yeah. And we call it invest in your marriage because it's called sacrificing for it. So we don't say, oh, when we have enough money, we will do this, right? We'll say, no, what are we willing to sacrifice so we can make this happen? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to say, you know what, we're willing to give up getting pizzas on Fridays for a year so we can afford to go to a couple of conferences that focus primarily on our marriage to pour into it? Because let's be honest, the statistics tell us that if you have an unhappy marriage, you have your career will struggle. Your friendships will struggle. Your church life will struggle. Everything struggles with a poor marriage. Everything flows from that, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, how are we investing in that? In what ways are we investing in that? Are we sacrificing ourselves for our marriage? In what ways are we doing that? And one of the things that Christy and I do that is amazing is we've learned to laugh together. Belly laugh about stuff together. And we have to ask ourselves, are we actually having fun in our relationships? Are you doing the things to have fun?
Here's
and
Stella.
She's bringing Stella all the way up.
Aww,
they're not going to be able to hear you. She's looking at the screen. Oh, it's our Frenchie. She's like, I'm making a debut. Don't mind me.
You don't want to sniff it?
Yeah. So anyway, are you guys laughing together? Are you guys having fun together? What are you doing to go out and have a good time together? Just you two. I don't mean going out with a group of other couples and then the women go to one way and the guys go another way and then you guys go have fun, right? No. I mean your marriage. How are you having fun together? No, I mean fun. I'm talking about fun.
Yeah, and
That's what
I
I'm talking
want you
about.
to talk about fun.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to talk about prayer.
Okay.
Like, how much are you praying together? Are you doing Bible studies together? Josh and I just ended a 5-week Bible study at our church with a bunch of other married couples. It was a marriage Bible study, and it was so awesome to sit in a room with other marriages and get so much from everyone else and everyone getting stuff from us. And it was just such a back and forth, and everyone was encouraged and just inspired by people sharing with what's going on in their lives and just pouring into each other as well.
Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves,
fun is important though.
Investing? She skipped right over that. She says, let's just pray instead.
Well, if that's because I am not as fun as Josh. Josh brings out the fun in me.
Gary Thomas told Christy she was the fun one this weekend. Okay. So that's apparently not true.
Okay,
that's her perspective of that.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the difference right now. All y'all, are you listening? Josh is funny. I am goofy fun. Like, I will go out and make a fool of myself and do the funny dances and do all these things. I am fun.
Yeah.
Josh is funny. But I can tend to lean, like, when we're at a conference, it's like, it's time to have fun. For me, it's like, there's a time and a place, you know? And so, like, when we're doing certain things, it's like, no, we're in life right now. We're grocery shopping. Like, let's get it done. But Josh is able to have that sense of fun, that childlike faith and fun in any situation that he's in. And I envy that a little bit, but he helps me be able to bring that fun out of me, because fun is so important. Laughter is so important.
It is.
To have in your marriage. You guys have to laugh together. I mean, sometimes even when we're on the verge of a fight, you know, Josh will say something like, ooh, yeah, look at me like that. I'll like it, you know, or he'll say something like, oh, don't get sassy with me. Like, I'm not afraid of that. Like, we'll go down, you know, and he makes me laugh. And then it loosens me up a little bit to say, well, I am really upset about this though. Stop making me laugh. And then we can talk about it.
Yeah.
That's true, right? Everything I just said was correct.
It's true. So somewhat, yeah. Mostly true. I would say that it's mostly true. You're funny, though. You're not always goofy. You like to be goofy.
I do.
You see yourself as goofy funny, but you're not. You have a great sense of humor, and you're funny. So
I'm not as funny as you.
Well, we're funny in different ways, I guess.
He is super funny.
We can agree with that. But yeah, so it's really important. You have to ask yourself then, this is what I want to say at the very end is, what do you have scheduled? Are you scheduling right now? If you have something, you live in Michigan, you want to schedule something, schedule for the next Celebrate Your Marriage. It's in October, okay? And I think if you go in right now, you might even be able to find a discount right now for this conference. I think you might be able to.
Well, maybe.
Go on and look. It can't hurt to look, right? So go on and look. I think there may be a discount right now. I thought I see them post something today about it. Cool. So go on, Celebrate Your Marriage. You go to jayandlaura.com. Do that. We're going to be there. We help at every conference.
They have a magician at the next one.
Love to, yes, and then they have a magician. And so it's a great time, but it's an opportunity. So if you haven't done it, this is the time to do something like this. Get connected to this, right? If you haven't, buy Gary Thomas's book, Sacred Marriage. He has a bunch of others too.
He has a sex book.
He has, well, which we all should have one, right?
But Jay and Laura's thing in October, Celebrate Your Marriage.
Yes.
And then our thing in November
9th.
is coming up.
Yeah.
And then
we have a cruise that we're going to be part of. Yeah, which is
in
January. We have a lot of things that are upcoming, right? Some of them are a little more expensive.
We're bringing the blended. We're bringing the blended at the cruise.
We are. We're bringing the blended at the cruise and at our event on the on November 9th. Yeah. But the point is there's things going on, right? And we're telling you there's things going on. How are you being committed? You know, affairs don't happen overnight. Christy mentioned it. They do not happen overnight. There's steps. And if you're not investing in your marriage, these things will slowly creep in. They just do, right? We will find excuses and reasons to not have intimacy. And I don't mean just sexual, but I mean overall intimacy, eye contact, touching, holding hands, being near each other, doing things together. We'll find reasons to create that space there. And then we don't do anything to build back into it. And so how are you investing in your marriage? Are you getting involved?
Amen.
Amen. You got anything else?
No. You said everything.
Okay.
It was great.
Well, thank you for being here. If you haven't had a chance yet, hit the like, subscribe, or share button, depending on what platform you're on. If you're on iTunes listening to this, we'd really appreciate a review. You can give us an honest one, but we really only want a 5-star. Just kidding.
I'm not.
Make it be honest. It's okay. We do appreciate anybody's feedback. If you have topics that you want us to talk about, please let us know. You can always instant message us. You can always find us at joshandchristy.com as well. We are here every Tuesday live at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.